answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Chief Justice John Roberts writing for the majority of the court that the 14th Amendment means what it says. The text of that amendment passed after the Civil War to extend citizenship to former slaves and their descendants is still the law of the land. If you're born on U.S. soil, you are a U.S. citizen. A major rebuke to President Trump, who had pushed for this executive order to take effect. It has come before the court twice. He attended oral arguments in person to look those justices in the eyes. And today, Chief Justice John Roberts, leaning into that opinion from over 100 years ago, 1898, the last time the Supreme Court looked at this issue, and he said that precedent is still our precedent, and it is the law of the land.
That is Devin Dwyer, I should say, for ABC News, talking about the Supreme Court ruling today, affirming birthright citizenship. So-called anchor babies. If you're born in our nation, on our soil, you are an American citizen. We're not the only nation that has that, but President Trump tried to get rid of it his first term, and that is, of course, what brought it to the head with the Supreme Court. But as you heard, the president lost out. 5-3 decision. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett siding with the other three, the liberals. Now, I'm all about protecting our Constitution. I don't like to look at these things as political, but constitutional. But, of course, we know the damage that this is causing our nation, and you cannot ignore that, regardless of your belief on the born in the USA giving you automatic citizenship. There are in about 30-plus countries that offer this unconditionally. In North America, it's not just the USA. You've got Canada and Mexico. They have it in place. Central America and South America, the Caribbean. So it's commonplace in this hemisphere. Not so accepted across the Atlantic to the other side. And one other ruling that came out today, the Supreme Court said states can keep trans athletes out of women's sports. Good. That's a plus. Welcome to hour number one, Larry Connors USA. News, analysis, opinion, and education. You leave each hour with more information than you have when we began. Let me give you an idea of still what's to come. In our next hour, our greatest threat to our nation, according to my guest, is not Russia, not China, not even North Korea. It is the Democrat, socialist, progressive wing of that party and what they're trying to do to our nation. And even Democrats are fearful. Hakeem Jeffries, he knows he's on a target list because he probably will be too moderate for these progressives. And later in this hour, specifically dealing with today's Supreme Court ruling and birthright citizenship, and, of course, the fact that the states can keep trans athletes out of women's sports. Hans von Spakovsky, my mistake there, Hans von Spakovsky, a constitutional lawyer. He'll break down what today's ruling actually is. And there are possible remedies if you want to go back to the Constitution. At least you have to do it that way. And our story behind the story today. John Pope Paul II visits to the U.S. I covered two of those, and some interesting stories buried inside his visits that maybe you never heard. And one in particular I'm sure many of you are unaware of. A St. Louis Jew played a major part in the papal visit, the papal mass to St. Louis. We'll have that story coming up later. Now back to the issue with nations with the birthright jus soleil, or sometimes jus soleil, basically stating If you're born on that nation's soil, you can stay. U.S., Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Guyana, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela, in addition to Barbados, Antigua, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Kitts, and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of nations that have that. Ours was put in place originally to protect slaves. Slaves who were brought here, had children here, and then to make sure that they could be a citizen of the U.S. That was the main purpose. News Fox analyst on the Constitution, George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley reacts.
Well, this is exactly what some of us predicted after the oral argument. Chief Justice Roberts said rather pointedly when counsel noted that things have changed in the citizenship area and how people become citizens. Roberts pointedly said, well, the Constitution hasn't changed, and that is reflected in this opinion. It is a roaring decision in favor of birthright citizenship as contained within the 14th Amendment. That is despite the countervailing evidence of some of the drafters of that amendment that they did not want this to be something that would cover birthright citizenship. Now, having said that, there are very good arguments on both sides here, good faith arguments. And I'm just reading through the Roberts decision today, but it is a very comprehensive and good faith argument.
There are good faith arguments, he points out. That's Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor and an analyst for Fox News, on this 5-4 ruling to reject President Trump's reform of our birthright citizenship policy. The issue has not really been, quite honestly, so much the policy itself, but how it's been exploited and continues to be so. A loose policy allowing foreigners to grab slices of American citizenship for their children. Russian and other oligarchs coming to Miami, putting their pregnant wives up in a hotel, real fancy place in Miami or wherever they wanted to be, and having their baby here, and then that baby is automatically a U.S. citizen. Then they return to their home country for that child to come back in the future. Same thing with China. And same thing with those who came across the border illegally under Joe Biden. Have their baby here, that baby is a citizen, even mom and dad are not. So millions of infants with no parental connection to the U.S. now have citizenship via this route. Texas Congressman Brandon Gill made a statement before the court actually made its ruling.
We certainly all recognize that birth tourism is a problem, as you just mentioned. I mean, the idea that children from our number one geopolitical adversary, or citizens of our number one geopolitical adversary, should come into the United States for the purpose of having babies who can then later on vote in American elections, and we know this is happening at a scale that is hard to fathom, thousands upon thousands upon thousands every single year. That's a real problem, and that's something that fundamentally undermines the meaning of American citizenship and fundamentally tears apart our social fabric and needs to be addressed. I think that, whenever you look at illegal aliens, you have a similar issue. So this is something that we're looking at, and that we're, I hope that the Supreme Court recognizes these very real problems and recognizes that the Constitution is not a suicide pact for the American people, but something that should be followed in order to uphold and sustain law and order in the United States.
But again, as you heard Jonathan Turley say, there were solid arguments you could be making for each side. Texas Congressman Gill making his statements before the ruling coming out, saying, I hope they recognize the damage it's causing our nation. I hear what he's saying, but I'll also have to say, if you're looking at the Constitution, focusing on the arguments of the Constitution, the damage to our country is not part of the consideration. It should not be and is not in this case. I still don't like it. Jonathan Turley says, then here's what you can do.
What is left here is a decision for the country as to whether it wants to examine a constitutional amendment. Some countries that have had birthright citizenship got rid of it because many of us believe it's an incredibly ill-considered policy. We can make that decision as well, but we're going to have that debate, and we're going to have to agree. We really haven't had a national debate on this. This has largely been contained within the court system. And it may be time for us as a country to decide how we define citizenship.
In other words, a constitutional amendment. And with today's politics in play, I'm not talking about just with Trump, but I'm talking about the Democrat Party is reshaping itself or actually being transformed by forces inside the party. The Democrat Party currently is in a free fall. It's kamikaze mission, suicide mission, endorsing, supporting Democrat, socialist, Marxist, communists. But those on the left that are inside there, they're looking for a way to protect themselves and trying to say some words of platitude. New York Democrat Senator Gillibrand looking for the good.
New York had a very strong change election. There was a huge interest in new candidates, younger candidates in some instances, the next generation of candidates. And so there was several instances where incumbents lost to challengers because of that trend. And that trend is a very good trend for nationwide elections because it shows how deep the interest in change is and how fired up new voters are, younger voters are, different demographics of voters.
And, of course, part of those demographics would be Chauvier, pro-Palestinian doctoral student who won with Mondami support New York's 13th congressional district. No experience in office and has basically a communist view of the nation. Now, Adam Schiff, Senator Adam Schiff of California, yes, he is now a senator, referenced someone like Democrat socialist activist Chauvier winning. He said, I welcome new members, new ideas. He's lying. He's lying. He's saying, you can have your new idea and everything as long as you don't mess with me. Hakeem Jeffries the same way. He's trying to tread water in very turbulent waters, and the sharks around him are this new progressive left. Keep saying that, well, we have a big tent. We want to work together. Cory Booker said the same thing. But they also know that you are on their target list. They want to replace you. They will challenge you with primaries the next time around because Chauvier is their new poster child. Democrat political analyst who got Bill Clinton into the White House, James Carville.
I don't have anything in common with someone that says that they're against interracial dating or doesn't want to have any incarceration for convicted felons. That's just not who I think the Democratic Party is, and they ought to let her be a democratic socialist. But I don't think they should. You know, you can't kick out of Congress. She was voted, but she doesn't have to be in a Democratic caucus. I just can't see how she can be part of the same coalition that we all part of. And I understand that, you know, in a coalition, you have to have a lot of slack in your line because not everybody's going to agree with me. But this is just as they would say, this is a bridge too far. That's the only way I can put it. And a bridge I want to cross. And I think a lot of Democrats feel the same way that I do.
That's James Carville, Democrat analyst, political strategist, says this is a bridge too far. And I don't want to cross it. Well, they're building more to that bridge, James, and it's not going to go where you want to go because it is away from where you stand. You made that very clear. And even members of the left wing inside the Democrat Party, they're now worried that we might not really be as far left as this new breed coming in. Give you a perfect example. Yahya Paul.
I think we're always told as progressives that we're a big tent party, that there has to be room for people who don't agree with progressives 100% of the time. That's got to be true the other way as well. If we are a big tent party, we have to have both sides of the big tent included. And I think there are going to be issues where we don't agree 100% of the time. But I think what Leader Jeffries said is right. We are focused on making life better for the American people. And Democratic voters across the country are choosing people they think will stand up and fight for working people.
Now, that is Washington State Congresswoman Jayapal. And again, saying we're a Big Tent party. We're going to have to include these people. You don't have a lion tamer in the center, and the lions are running crazy. And they're coming in under the tent, got their nose under it, and now inside because you are trying to, quote, embrace them because you're fearful. You guys are fearful of them. You are fearful. Stop and think about it. You're fearful of what they're doing to your party and what they could do to your political career future. We're worried about what they can do to our nation. Once again, James Carville.
And again, I want to be clear. I believe in a big tent. I mean, everybody doesn't have to agree with me. If you can be for Medicare for all, which I don't think is a particularly good idea, but I got that. It's fine. I would campaign. I would help you. I mean, you said a different view about how to expand healthcare. You're going too far when you start. And if you want to say, as I do, that I think the government of Israel makes horrific decisions, I don't support them in any way. That's fine. I agree with you. But when you say Israel should not exist, then I'm gone. You left the house with me. That there's a whole difference between not liking a regime or a government and denying that some people have a right to exist. And I think we should draw a very clear line there.
Oh, James, you did, and you made it very clear. You're on the wrong side with these communist Marxists that are now taking apart your party. To give you an example, what kind of people are going to come out of this? Look what happened in Seattle Sunday for their LGBTQ Pride Parade. Numerous men and women walking with children naked in this march. Flopping around, whatever. Absolutely naked, making no effort to cover themselves up in front of children. That's what you're getting with this part. This is the kind of people that will be coming out of that. And they want to see that kind of attitude all across the nation. And, of course, watch for the climate god worship to come back as well. Oh, speaking of that, the Paris deputy mayor is blaming the U.S. for that deadly heat wave they're having in France. She says blame Americans because they're using so much air conditioning and is putting out emissions that in turn is causing a heat wave in Paris. I'll bet you she's not sweltering in heat, that she has air conditioning running. You want to lay your money on it? I'll take that bet any day. Coming up, Hans von Spakovsky on today's rulings. And our story behind the story. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gesundheit, call Wellington Environmental to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. True comfort is something you should feel every day in your home. It's the quiet of your mornings, the consistency of your indoor temperature, the way your home feels season after season. With Renewal by Andersen, from consultation through installation, everything is handled by one experienced team, built around your home, your schedule. Our exclusive Fibrex material, stronger than vinyl, built for extreme temperatures. And right now, you can save 20% off your entire project. Plus, take an additional $100 off every window and door, up to $1,000. 20% off the entire project. Flexible financing is available, but you need to call by April 30th. 877-WINDOWS. RenewalByAndersen.com. 877-WINDOWS. RenewalByAndersen.com. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. Well, my guest I lined up yesterday because I was certainly expecting this ruling to come down from the High Court. Hans von Spakovsky, he is the senior legal counsel for Advancing American Freedom. Hans, glad to have you on board.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I wanted you because you are a constitutional legal expert and also federal election expert as well. But let's deal with the SCOTUS ruling, basically that anchor babies are entitled to birthright citizenship, 100% American. Did you expect that ruling and your reaction to what you've seen and heard so far?
Well, I was pessimistic that we would get a ruling like that, although I was hoping that it wouldn't be quite as, frankly, extreme as it is. Once again, it's Chief Justice Roberts writing the opinion, and this is probably the second worst mistake he's ever made. It might be the first, the other one being his mistake in the Obamacare case. But this decision and the one in the Obamacare case are probably two of the worst decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court in the last 50 years.
Now, some are going to say you're speaking on political issue. You're not looking at it as a constitutional expert.
No, but that's wrong. In fact, Roberts gets the history and legislative background of the 14th Amendment. He gets it completely wrong. In fact, the dissent by Thomas and the dissent by Alito completely eviscerates the majority opinion and points out all of the mistakes that they make in supposedly laying out the history of the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment. I mean, if you want a good exposition of the actual history, you read the dissents in this case, not the majority opinions, which are just wrong.
Well, it's a 194-page decision saying Trump's order violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And again, 6-3 vote. And Chief Justice Roberts said citizenship then and now was the right to have rights. So what's the argument the other side that should trump it but did not?
Well, he completely ignores what the sponsors of the 14th Amendment said. They said that this was a two-part provision and that you not only had to be born in the United States, but you had to be within the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, Roberts just says, oh, if you're born here, you're within the jurisdiction. That is not what that phrase meant to the sponsors. They said what that meant was you owe your political allegiance to the U.S. government. And clearly, the child of, for example, a tourist who's only here for 2 weeks, has the baby, and then leaves, that child doesn't have any political allegiance to the U.S., isn't within the jurisdiction of the U.S., and Roberts just kind of glances over that. And again, Alito and Thomas point out just how wrong he is in his recitation of the history of this provision. You know, the odd thing is Kavanaugh concurred in the judgment, but then said, well, he doesn't think it violates the 14th Amendment. It violates a federal statute. So he hints that Congress could potentially change the statute. So that's basically 4 justices who are saying that the 14th Amendment does not provide birthright citizenship.
Now, again, it was put in place in the 1800s. It was entitled or intended to protect slaves who were brought here against their will and had children here. That was the origin of it. But that was the 1800s when we were more isolated by geography, and now, you know, we got air and mass transit and so forth that has changed the face of the world, much less our nation. It is an entirely different world, but does that detract from what the founders intended?
The fact that it's a different world today, you don't even need to take that into consideration. If you go back to the original understanding of it, it does not do what Justice Roberts said today. Unfortunately, also, once again, joined by Amy Coney Barrett, who appears to be turning herself into the new Justice Kennedy of the Supreme Court.
That's a good point. You're listening to Hans von Spakovsky. He's a senior legal counsel advancing American freedom. Well, I pointed out to the audience, we're not the only nation that has this. About 33 plus U.S., Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, South America, Caribbean. So we're not the only nation that has this, but I don't see it so much in Europe.
No. In fact, it's only a small minority of countries that have it. And some countries that had it, like Australia, got rid of it because they realized what a mistake it was, because it provided citizenship to people who really are not fully loyal to and are not part of the culture and society of a country.
Jonathan Turley, Fox News analyst, George Washington professor, says, well, the remedy, the next step would be ratification, to the Constitution. Do you see that possibility?
Yeah, I think the only way to really fix this is a constitutional amendment. That would cause a particularly fierce fight between the red states and the blue states, assuming you could even get it through Congress.
And it has to go through Congress before it can even go to the states for the 3/4 of them to approve? Okay. And again, as you said, that's there is a constitutional convention option, but that's never been used, has it?
No, it has never been used, although there's been a movement in recent years to hold a constitutional convention to try to fix some issues like this one.
Well, and another ruling that came down that was very big, and that is, to this point, Title IX is only for biological sex, basically saying states can keep trans athletes out of women's sports.
That's right, although there were 2 cases. And not only does those kind of state laws not violate Title IX, which is the federal law, but the other case involved a claim that it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and in both cases, the Supreme Court said no, it's not a violation of the Constitution, it's not a violation of federal law for states to keep biological men out of women's sports.
Well, to that extent, I know basically if we're going to have the states actually making the decision, then am I correct about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the states to decide what they're going to do about this, except that, the Supreme Court said Title IX doesn't prevent this kind of law, but the Justice Department, has been actually filing suit saying that this is it's discriminatory, that you're discriminating against women if you allow biological men to participate in their sport. So that's a whole nother set of cases that might prevent liberal states like California from putting in laws that allow biological males to participate in women's sports.
Well, riddle me this. How was it that SCOTUS Justice Jackson was able to even make a ruling on it when in her confirmation hearing she couldn't even identify what a woman was?
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. But I guess in this case she decided to make an exception.
And we knew it would be coming. But
right.
These are the two main cases that came out today, and that wraps up the court for this session around in the hearings. But is there a challenge still available to go back on the birthright issue in the last 30 seconds?
It's very interesting. Thomas said in his dissent that this decision was rushed and he does not think it will withstand the test of time.
That's a very solid point. As always, Hans, I do appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
One thing very quickly. The SCOTUS allowed the other day in counting of mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day.
Bad decision written by Amy Coney Barrett, once again joined by Roberts and the 3 liberal justices.
Do I understand in the state of California that the voter can actually postmark their own stamp or their envelope, put their own date on it if they want?
If the postmark is blurry or non-existent, they just go by whatever date is inside the envelope written by the voter.
All right. Listen, I appreciate it. And as I said, it's the ruling of birthright is not just so much a constitutional issue, but what it's doing to our country, although the court cannot take into effect what it does to the face of our nation. So they got to stick to the Constitution. Hans, again, thank you for your time, sir.
Sure thing, Larry. Bye-bye.
You bet. We'll do it again. Yeah, making some solid points to keep in mind. Constitutional Convention, well, maybe that would come to be. You got to get states, you have red state, blue states battling if you go through ratification process. And that's going to be very difficult. 2/3 supermajority of the House and Senate need to be passed first. Coming up, Pope John's visits to the U.S. I covered 2 of them. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I want to share something with you. Cooking a pizza using coal creates an amazing pizza. Only one place to get it, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. Of course, they offer a wide variety of pasta, but you just visit the website napolistl.com, dine in or take out, and get ready for patio season. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Try it. You can thank me later. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. True comfort is something you should feel every day in your home. It's the quiet of your mornings, the consistency of your indoor temperature, the way your home feels season after season. With Renewal by Andersen, from consultation through installation, everything is handled by one experienced team, built around your home, your schedule. Our exclusive Fibrex material, stronger than vinyl, built for extreme temperatures. And right now, you can save 20% off your entire project. Plus, take an additional $100 off every window and door, up to $1,000. 20% off the entire project. Flexible financing is available, but you need to call by April 30th. 877-WINDOWS. RenewalByAnderson.com. 877-WINDOWS. RenewalByAnderson.com. When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice you have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-E-R, onderlaw.com.
This is News Talk STL.
I don't need the pills you take, just feel the spirit moving. Brother, I ain't slept in days, all without the drugs you're using. Fed me for the builders use me for the Great Commission. As it was and always will, as it is, I'm here to witness old times screaming and shouting. Grow up, tell it on the mountain. Faith too strong, be left out in way of trying God.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
This is the life of Pope John Paul II. He was born on the 18th of May 1920 in Waterous, Poland, with his original name being Karol Joseph Wojtyła. The first part of his childhood, he was born into a relatively free nation, as Poland had just stopped the Soviet invasion. However, lucky in this regard, Karol was about to experience some deep tragedy. When he was just 8 years old, his mother Emilia died, and just 4 years after that, at the age of 12, his older brother died. After Karol had completed his studies, he moved from his hometown in 1938 to the former capital of Poland, Krakow. Unfortunately, this was right before the start of World War II, and Nazi Germany invaded Poland on September 1939. Karol fled with his father east with thousands of other Poles, but soon returned once they learned of the Soviet invasion of Poland. Here, Karol kept his studies going on the down low, and he grew very smart. By the time he was Pope, he spoke 9 languages fluently: Polish, Latin, Ancient Greek, Italian, French, German, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. On All Saints' Day 1946, Wojtyła was ordained as a priest, the initiation of his great work for Christ. During this time as a priest, he remained strongly academic. He spent a lot of his time writing poetry and prose on a range of religious, personal, and moral topics, including publishing his first book on love and responsibility.
That is presented by Catholic 365, a thumbnail sketch of Pope John Paul II. He made and quickly became the most traveled pope in history, 6 significant visits to the U.S. during his 27 years. I covered 2 of them. I'll break that down for you as we move forward. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, he became pope in a year that had a lot of turmoil and a lot of strange things going on. Paul VI had died in 1978. Succeeded in August that year by John Paul I. He died September the 28th, after the shortest pontificate in modern times, lasting only 33 days. So the cardinals gathered again October 14, a Saturday, behind the sealed doors of the Sistine Chapels. They took 8 different ballots, and then, as CBS reports, this announcement.
This is a CBS News special report. The name of the new pope is about to be announced. I'm Harry Reasoner in New York. Now to Winston Burdett at the Vatican.
The tall windows have just opened above the portico of St. Peter's Basilica for the announcement and the presentation of the new head of the Roman Catholic Church, who was elected just a little over 40 minutes ago. The man who will make the announcement is Cardinal Pericle Felice, to whom this honor falls in virtue of his rank as head of the Order of Cardinal Deacons. Cardinal Felice, his announcement will be brief, and it will be in Latin, the language of the Church.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum.
I announce glad news. And next will come the words, Habemus Papam, we have a pope.
Habemus Papam.
October 16th, 1978. And he quickly, as I said, became the most traveled pope in history, logging some 700,000 miles, visiting nearly 130 countries. He had two meetings with President Reagan. The first actually happened on a stopover in Fairbanks, Alaska. Reagan flew to Alaska to meet him when he was on a stopover on another tour around the world. That's when President Reagan, on May 2nd, 1984, met with the Pope at one point. And then, of course, later he would meet him in Miami. That was part of the longest U.S. visit that he ever made to our nation, September 10th through the 19th, 1987. So the Pope had two meetings with President Reagan, and that second one coming in 1987 in Miami.
In a document of the Second Vatican Council that you helped to draft, it is written, in language intelligible to every generation, the Church should be able to answer the ever-recurring questions which men ask about the meaning of this present life and of the life to come. In language intelligible to every generation. Certainly no one can speak with greater force to our own generation than you yourself. In Poland, you experienced Nazism and communism. As Pope, you suffered a terrorist attack that nearly claimed your life. Still, you proclaim that the central message of our own time, that the central message of all time is not hatred, but love.
On my part, I come to you, America, with sentiments of friendship, reverence, and esteem. I come as one who already knows you and loves you, as one who wishes you to fulfill completely your noble destiny of service to the world. Today, like then, I come to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ to all those who freely choose to listen to me, to tell again the story of God's love in the world.
The Pope with President Reagan as he began his longest visit in the U.S., September 10, 1987. That was Miami. Later he went to Columbia, South Carolina, New Orleans, and San Antonio. And by the way, at San Antonio, maybe a near tragedy could have been taking place while he was holding a mass. But what happened just days before might have saved not only the Pope, but many who would have been attending.
It now appears the twin 12-story towers at the Papal Mass site were an accident waiting to happen. The wait ended Thursday evening. In a matter of seconds, the towers were down. Luckily, the parking lot behind them had been cleared and no one was hurt. By this morning, the remains of the towers were cleared away from the altar, Engineers checked to see if the remaining structure was sound. They say it is. And they say what happened to the towers is no big deal.
This is not a tragedy. This is just some decorations that blew down. No one's hurt. The mass is going to go on. This isn't to us a terrible thing.
But church officials say they were concerned enough about the safety of the towers last week to ask another engineer for a second opinion.
Then the question arose, well, you know, with the possibility of a very strong gust, could something happen? And that's at the point in which we said, well, maybe we should try to even make it stronger than it is, even though all the assurances that we had was that it was a safe structure and that we should have no problem with it.
The towers were built to withstand wind gusts of 40 miles an hour, but some construction workers say the winds were not that high when the towers fell.
And the timing was ahead of the Pope arriving for that Mass in San Antonio. And from there he went to Phoenix and Los Angeles. Now, my colleague, my co-anchor at the time at Channel 4, Julius, had picked him up when he first arrived in Miami. And then I was going to later join forces in California with him for the L.A. Dodger Stadium Mass. And, of course, you had the St. Louis pastoral visit in January 1999. So there are more stories behind the visit throughout the U.S. and in St. Louis. So there is more to the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
On the streets of St. Louis, crowds had been gathering for hours, ready to greet the man affectionately called El Papa. Parishes throughout the Archdiocese rang their church bells to welcome Pope John Paul. This first of 3 parades ended at the Archbishop's home. This is the Americas Center, a massive convention center where more than 100,000 worshipers, including 2,000 volunteers, 1,000 priests, and 250 cardinals, archbishops, and bishops are expected for the Papal Mass. High school and college-age youth have been arriving since early morning. All of them were anxious to see Pope John Paul and to hear his message. Everywhere the Pope travels, he is cheered by the youth. As Pope John Paul knows, these young people are the future of the church, the light of the world. After a short trip in the Popemobile, the Holy Father arrived at the Kiel Center for his evening prayer service. Before entering the main arena, he met briefly with Cardinal Home Run King Mark McGwire. And then it was through a curtain onto the main floor, and a welcome perhaps unparalleled in St. Louis.
It is with great joy that we welcome you today, this evening, to St. Louis.
That was Archbishop Regali at that point, who had served in the St. Louis Archdiocese prior to that time of introducing the Pope. Now, an interesting thing, the man chosen to oversee all these events and make sure they went smoothly handled a lot of big promotion events. I mean, bringing in big name rock stars like Kiss, Rolling Stones, He had his own production company, and they did a lot, and they did it well. Steve Shankman, a friend of mine, and he was tapped to oversee the St. Louis visit by the Pope. And I do recall Steve saying, I said, I cannot believe it. I'm in charge of everything that try to show him off the best we can for this pastoral visit. Again, that was in January 26 and 27 in 1999, and then added, and I'm a Jew. I'd mentioned that I had picked up coverage of the Pope when he made his extended trip to the States, in addition to that final trip to St. Louis. I joined Julius in California for the L.A. Dodger Stadium Mass. The next day, we were off to Carmel. There were two papal planes. The Pope was on one, which was Papal One, and reporters and photographers on a second plane. We were the first to land. Our plane went in to land at Carmel, and the pilot told us that we've never had a plane this big land here at Carmel. We'll see how it ends up. Well, thank you very much. We got down safely. Then we all watched the papal plane land safely. And Clint Eastwood was the mayor of Carmel, California at that point. So he was out to greet the Pope and the Knights of Columbus. As the Pope made his way through, shaking hands with everyone, someone's telling him that this is Clint Eastwood. He acknowledged him, shook hands, and moved away, and I doubt he had ever seen a spaghetti western in his life. And as soon as the Pope then left to go to another venue, all the flight attendants who had spent all this time for almost a week at this point with the Pope, the female flight attendants quickly flocked around Clint Eastwood. I mean, they'd seen the Pope, but now they got Clint Eastwood. It was an interesting sight. Honored to be part of covering that. Pope John Paul passed away April 2nd, 2005. But a lasting memory throughout St. Louis and the nation and the world. The story behind the story tomorrow. Mother Teresa. The Catholic Church declared that she was a saint. Others say she was a monster. The story behind the story tomorrow. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Let's be candid, honest. No out-of-state law firm can represent you better than Onder Law. O-N-D-E-R. Hometown roots, attorneys living right here with you and your family. When you suffer an injury because someone else was negligent, Onder Law will make sure the other party takes full responsibility. You'll get full compensation, not a backroom deal worked out with some insurance companies. And of course, we're moving into the stormy season. And again, when you have a legitimate claim, you should be properly compensated. Onder Law does not toy around with adjusters, investigators, lawyers trained to cheat you of what is rightfully yours. Onder Law has already recovered millions for families across Missouri and Illinois. Onder wins. Not just a catchy phrase, it's a fact. So I'll repeat it. Onder wins. OnderLaw.com. O-N-D-E-R. OnderLaw.com. Wins.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Well, it's better to be talking than fighting, but obviously President Trump holds all the cards, coming from a position of strength with the world's strongest military and the brave men and women that serve in it. And so, President Trump can get the deal that he knows is in the best interest of the American people, ensuring that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, making sure the Strait of Hormuz is open and toll-free, and making sure that these Iranian proxies no longer cause chaos and violence across the Middle East. And so, I think President Trump is a deal maker, he's a negotiator, and most importantly, he wants peace. But he knows that making peace, you come from a position of strength, and that's where he stands right now.
That is exactly what he's doing, and we wish him the best as he moves forward. Yes, there are the naysayers out there that saying Trump is not accomplishing anything. They continue to fire back and forth at each other, but they're still talking at this point. It could well reach a point where basically we're done talking. All you do is blather, 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 and you're not doing anything. It is the Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope attack by Iran. And they keep, according to some sources inside Iran reportedly saying it, that, we're working on it. We're getting closer, but there's some things like they were going to allow the International Atomic Energy Commission inspection, UN inspectors to go in and look around their country. Now they're saying they're not going to. Well, I never expected them to anyway. And, of course, that has to go back on the table for more discussions. But as you were listening to our U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Matt Whitaker, President Trump holds all the cards. And he has the Middle East with him. See, Iran, in trying to say, well, we're going to continue to control the strait, we're going to impose fines and tolls, they thought their neighboring country just across the strait, Oman, would be with them. And there was uncertainty there for a while, but now Oman has made it clear, no, we're not going to participate in restricting ships coming and going by placing tolls and tariffs on them. And you know why? Because Russia and even China said, you cannot do that. So where are they going to get their support? If we isolate Oman, as we've done with Iran, they can see what's happened. They do not want to be in that position. And they know damn well Trump will enforce it. And all the other Middle East countries are all in favor of what Trump is doing to keep the Strait open. And, of course, they do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon in their backyard. It isn't just Israel concerned about their life. And again, keep in mind the missiles they have been firing into U.S. bases and anything near our bases in neighboring Middle East countries, Bahrain, Syria. They just continue to fire into them, and Iraq. They don't care who they hit or what they hit. They're just trying to make it clear that, I said Iraq, they're trying to make it clear that Iran will make a decision that could affect life and death at an instant. You do not want them to have a nuclear weapon. Welcome to hour number 2, Larry Connors USA, June 30, 2026. We're here every Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 for you. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program, even as I'm speaking. You can go right now to Larry Connors USA Rumble, Facebook, News Talk STL, Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you miss anything, the audio or the video, they go up as podcasts later. And I see where a lot of people watch later or listen later. We thank you for that. You get that at News Talk STL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, any podcast forum you want to go to. I just ask one thing of you, please. If you watch or listen another time, share it with someone you know, a friend, a family relative, maybe even an enemy. See if we can enlighten them, because with Larry Connors USA, you're always going to get news, analysis, commentary, and education. You leave each hour with more information than you have as we began that hour. That's my promise, my guarantee to you. Later, my guest is going to talk about what he considers the greatest threat to our nation. It is not Russia, China, North Korea, and not really even Iran at this point. It's inside our borders. It's inside the so-called Democrat Party. He will warn you that what they're doing will destroy our nation from inside. And I think he's right. All right, back to a big story today. Obviously, the High Court issuing its ruling on birthright citizenship.
We have another decision, and it's a big one. It has to do with birthright citizenship. It was an executive order that President Trump, on day one of his second term in January 2025, signed the executive order. It was immediately challenged, and now we can tell you that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump's order to limit birthright citizenship.
Chief Justice wrote this opinion. Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Barrett, and Jackson joined. Jackson has a concurring opinion in which Sotomayor joins. Justice Kavanaugh files an opinion concurring in the judgment and dissenting in part. The dissent comes from Justice Thomas. He is joined by Gorsuch, Alito, and then Justice Gorsuch apparently has his own dissenting opinion. So it is what we expected after the arguments here, and it looks like a bit of a split, but enough of a plurality coming together to say that the executive order that the president issued very quickly upon taking office is no good, and that if people are here, subject to the jurisdiction thereof includes people who are here illegally. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice Roberts says this: citizenship then and now was the right to have rights to freely participate in our political community. Talking about the 14th Amendment, the framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every freeborn person in this land. That's a quote, and it looks like it's a quote back to some of the legislative debate about this in Congress. He says we keep that promise today.
We keep that promise today, but for many, you are totally misinterpreting what the intent was for the 14th Amendment. I had in the last hour Hans von Spakovsky. He's currently with the American Freedom Foundation, but at the time, as you often have heard him speaking on behalf of the Heritage Foundation, Heritage Institution. Hans has always been a great source when it comes to dealing with understanding the Constitution. And if you missed that interview, I strongly advise you to call it up. Take a look at it later as a podcast. Hans von Spakovsky, senior legal counsel, Advancing American Freedom, and he says the court failed all the way around, and in fact pointing out the fact that Justice Amy Coney Barrett voted with the liberals and Justice Roberts just proves that they are not really looking at the Constitution. And I'm looking at some response from conservatives referenced Barrett, not just on that decision, but the Election Day decision that was made the other day, where basically she authored the majority opinion ruling in favor of a Mississippi law allowing mail-in ballots to be counted in elections even after received after Election Day. At what point is it over? Come on. You do know that if you're filing your IRS tax statement, even if you're filing for an extension, it has to be postmarked April 15th. Unless it occurs on a holiday or weekend, then you get an extra day or two of grace. But that is the date, April 15th. You can't send it in May 15th and say, here it is, and you be good with the government. That would not fly. So why are we allowing this to happen? It's the thing that the left wants to push so they can get more and more illegal voting in. Missouri Republican Senator Schmidt posted yesterday talking about how Barrett had joined the 5-4 ruling, stating that Election Day, you can date it anytime you want and send it in later. He said it, and I'm quoting Senator Schmidt, as he posted on X, a shockingly wrong opinion. Justice Barrett joins with the liberal justices to hold that federal election law does not preempt states who allow late mail-in ballots to be counted. Terrible for election integrity. Another reason we must pass the Save America Act. And he adds, or another conservative author states, Barrett is the biggest conservative judicial disaster since Souter. And adds, the worst part is she'll be there pushing leftist policies for another 40 years. All right, you don't like that ruling and don't like the ruling today by the court saying if you're born here, you have an automatic citizenship, and I don't like either one of them. And according to Hans von Spakovsky, they did not actually watch and look at the Constitution as originally written. Either way, it's done for now. But Jonathan Turley, Fox News analyst, George Washington law professor, says, here's the next step for a possible remedy.
What is left here is a decision for the country as to whether it wants to examine a constitutional amendment. Some countries that have had birthright citizenship got rid of it because many of us believe it's an incredibly ill-considered policy. We can make that decision as well, but we're going to have that debate, and we're going to have to agree. We really haven't had a national debate on this. This has largely been contained within the court system. And it may be time for us as a country to decide how we define citizenship.
Now, if they're going to go through an amendment, which he's talking about, that's what you'd have to do is go back and amend the Constitution. You need a congressional vote to approve the proposal for it. 2/3 supermajority vote in the House and the Senate. With today's politics, how are you going to get that to happen? The Constitutional Convention is another option, called for by 2/3, 34 of our state legislatures. That's never been used, been talked about, been pushed around for the last several years. I remember interviewing some of those, pushing it maybe 10 plus years ago. And then if you get through the Congress, the amendment still has to be ratified by the states. There are two ways Congress can have that done. 3/4 of the state legislatures, 38, would have to vote to approve the amendment. Or they could have state conventions, and again, 38 of those states approve it via a specially elected ratifying convention. That has been used once for the 21st Amendment. But with political turmoil we have nowadays, how can you get any of those to work moving forward? In fact, the Democrat Party as we know it now, even as Democrats know it, I don't think it's going to exist in the near future. Certainly not based on how leftists are embracing socialist communists, even if they're doing it in fear.
Our colleagues over at K-File found that one of the candidates who won in New York last week, Daria-Lisa Avila-Chevalier, she's running in New York 13, I believe. Yeah. She repeated sympathetic references to communism, Marxist ideology, Soviet figures like Vladimir Lenin. Do you believe that complicates the argument in favor of these candidates who are Democratic Socialists?
I think Daria-Lisa Avila-Chevalier ran a campaign that convinced the voters of her district that she would stand up and fight for them. Whatever labels you want to attach to it, whatever she said, I believe that we've got to understand that Big Tent means Big Tent, and voters have to be respected. And so are there going to be disagreements about language she may have used? And I'm not sure when that language was used. The campaign that I saw was very much about what working people want.
Well, that is Yahya Paul of Washington State, basically trying to give a pass to Chevalier because she does not want to get on her target list. But Chevalier has done things in the past where she makes it clear that she's pro-Palestinian. She is a pro-Palestinian professor to begin with. Doctoral student, I should point out. I don't think she's actually a professor at this point. But the 32-year-old has made it clear that she is all about eliminating Jews if she can. We know many on the left buy into that. But how deep do they want to go with it? She also had social media posts that she's tried to wipe out since, where she called out Kamala Harris and even Joe Biden. And you know what her answer is to that? Well, I regret what I stated back then about them. I have matured. And many say, no, you're just reshaping yourself. That's the way chameleons do. And a snake sheds its skin, but it's still a snake. And yet Yahya Paul of Washington State still trying to, how do we embrace this?
I think we're always told as progressives that we're a big tent party, that there has to be room for people who don't agree with progressives 100% of the time. That's got to be true the other way as well. If we are a big tent party, we have to have both sides of the big tent included. And I think there are going to be issues where we don't agree 100% of the time. But I think what Leader Jeffries said is right. We are focused on making life better for the American people. And Democratic voters across the country are choosing people they think will stand up and fight for working people.
Yeah, and Jeffries has to acknowledge that if I don't say things like that, I could be targeted. So it's the same for Cory Booker. So it's the same for New York Democrat Senator Gillibrand.
New York had a very strong change election. There was a huge interest in new candidates, younger candidates in some instances, the next generation of candidates. And so there was several instances where incumbents lost to challengers because of that trend. And that trend is a very good trend for nationwide elections because it shows how deep the interest in change is and how fired up new voters are, younger voters are, different demographics of voters.
In other words, younger, stupid voters, really. Those that just follow the party line. And it is not good news for our nation. And my next guest is going to get into that issue. Todd Sheets, known for politics, economics, and well-being, has his newsletter on Wealth and Progress. He says the real threat to our nation is what we're seeing happen inside the Democrat Party and when it breaks across the face of our nation. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gesundheit, call Wellington Environmental to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is Silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's, locally owned, can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com.
This is News Talk STL.
There's 1,000 miles in 18 hours. I got a double drive down southbound 35. I got the hammer down, Detroit made 525, pushing my ass right down that line. And that smell of burning diesel fuel just tells me that I'm back out on the road.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest has a newsletter out. I currently encourage you to subscribe free of charge. It's on Substack, on Wealth in Progress, also available YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And he has a book, 2008, What Really Happened. I'm going to have him back on for another date to discuss that book regarding the disaster the nation went through in 2008 and since. Todd Sheets, welcome aboard, sir.
Larry, it's great to be with you today.
Well, I'm looking at a piece you did post on Wealth and Progress, your Substack free article, and I want to pick out one line, and let's start with that and go from there. And that is, you say the present danger in America today, and I assume you mean facing America, not just inside America, is not China, Russia, or Iran, but rather what has become the full-fledged socialist takeover of the Democrat Party. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, well, I think that, that's very clear at this point. It's been made even more clear by what happened in New York here recently, where Mamdani backed these three Democratic socialist/communist candidates, all of whom won over more moderate Democrats. And I think what we're seeing is kind of the evolution of a 60-year process where the young radicals who protested back in the 1960s, did some good things for the nation at that point in time on civil rights, women's rights, some other areas.
Right.
But over time, they became gradually more and more left-wing. Their agenda moved from making America a better version of itself to overthrowing America and trying to turn it into something entirely different. And I think we're now seeing, that faction of the Democratic Party at its strongest, most outwardly forcing its agenda on the country that we've seen. They've been kind of operating in the shadows for many years, building up these ideas of colonialism, exploitation, supremacy in the school systems as a justification for the takeover and the overthrow that they're trying to enact here. But now we're seeing where this is out of the shadows, and they're right out in the open, and they're proud of it.
And they are, and yet they're still trying to hide it. In fact, the New York Socialist congressional candidate Chevalier, and they call themselves Democrat Socialists. They're not just Democrats; they're Democrat Socialists. She had hyped up communism, Marxism, Soviet figures on her social media, but now she's deleted a lot of them because maybe that would be a step too far if we want to bring more along with us, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, at least in the beginning. There's a part of the party that understands the vast majority of America does not want to align with this kind of agenda, but that part of the party is losing the argument within the Democratic Party to these more hardliners like Mamdani and the others. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now. It's getting to a point where the hardliners, are taking over and winning. They're the energy within the party. But this isn't something new. I think that's one of the important things we need to keep in mind. There are people in the Democratic Party trying to convince us that this is a small faction that doesn't have that much influence nationwide. And there's maybe truth in that to the extent as who's been elected. But if you look at where the heart and soul and the intellectual core of the Democratic Party is and has been for the last 60 years, it's this radical left that first took over the academic institutions and then the traditional media, and then slowly the Democratic Party. And that's what's driving the agenda. It did the same thing under Biden, even though they tried to convince everybody that, this was a middle of the road kind of administration. Right. It was Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders pulling the lever. So this isn't something new. And if you look at the heart and soul of the party, it is not something small and isolated. It's the core of the party.
And they're also trying to say, they're looking for ways to embrace it. Washington State Congresswoman Yahya Paul, we are a big tent party. We want to embrace all of this. New York Democrat Senator Gillibrand says it's good to have some kind of differing opinions inside the party. Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, all saying, well, let's kind of embrace it. They are embracing out of fear because they know that they're going to be targeted. They're soon not going to be part of the Democrat socialist agenda. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's good to have other ideas as long as the horrible ideas don't take over. And that's what we're seeing now. This is not different from what we saw with Fidel Castro back in the early 1960s. Everybody in Cuba at that time was convinced he had good ideas of how to move the country forward in a more beneficial way, in a way that would help the working class. And here they are now, 60 years later, 90 miles south of our southern border, and the country's in absolute chaos. And so, we don't want those kind of ideas can be expressed. That's fine. We're not trying to shut down their right to speech, but we don't want them taking hold and becoming the driving central force behind what's governing this country. And that's why Republicans and Democrats who want to fight back need to stay motivated to make sure this remains a small and isolated part of what's happened in the Democratic Party on the political level.
But again, New York Democrat Senator Gillibrand says this is what we need all across the nation. I don't think she believes that. I really don't. I think she's just trying to protect herself, put some buffers up around her so she won't be attacked by Democrat socialists, because there will be more coming.
Well, and I think she also knows, and you alluded to this, that, throughout history, whether it's the communists, the democratic socialists, the socialists, whomever, they are ruthless in their pursuit of power. You know, they will go after anybody and everybody, including people within their own party, if they think that they're blocking their agenda to enact this radical overthrow of what America is all about and to send us in a completely new direction. And I think there's the people, you know, that are further towards the center in the Democratic Party, they're afraid to say anything. This would be Clinton, Obama, all those people. I think they're all in that category.
I mean, and a JFK would not be, he would be toxic anywhere near this. And Obama is getting to that point. They don't want to be associated with that kind. And you point out in your Substack article about how, and you discussed a moment ago, how we saw the revolution of the young people in the 60s and a lot of Vietnam War, Civil Rights Acts, all of this had legitimacy and it improved the nation, had a value to it. But as you point out, the views expressed by Dr. King dealing with free speech and a new nation and not recognizing color as an issue for declaring how good or bad you might be, you're pointing out that this new radical version basically wants to just cancel and wipe out the other side.
Yeah, if we go back to the 1960s and we look at the I Have a Dream speech of Dr. King, we don't hear somebody saying we need to overthrow America and take its founding ideals and put them in the trash can and create a completely different country. What we hear is somebody saying we were founded on brilliant ideals. The only problem was they weren't extended to all Americans. And our job now in the 1960s is to fight and push for those ideals to be extended to everybody within the system. That is a unifying message, and it's one at its core that is right. That's why I think, you know, they built up so much of a, you know, moral case for their argument at that point in time. But then what we've had happen is, you know, over the last 20 years or so, they moved beyond that agenda, and they moved into an agenda which is, instead of fighting for free speech rights, we're fighting to cancel your right to speech if you disagree with us. Instead of fighting for equality of opportunity, regardless of your race, and based entirely on the individual content of your character, to use Dr. King's words, we're going to use political privilege to hand out political benefits based on your race.
Now,
so, you know, nothing shows how far the party's moved better than that swing right there.
In our last 20, 30 seconds, we look at AOC. She came on the scene as a poster child. And Mondami came on as the latest poster child. Now Chevalier and the others like her are coming on as still a new and brander new poster children. What's the next step in the last 20 seconds?
Well, I think the next step for them is these people are going to drive the party. This is where the energy within the party is coming from. It's something that is creating excitement within their base. They're going to push that agenda until they are defeated so soundly, so many times at the polls, that the Democratic Party realizes we've got to make these people go away and go back to what we were like in the 60s and probably up through the 90s to some extent.
All right. Todd Sheets, again, check out On Wealth in Progress, available free on Substack, also on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Todd, we will have you back in numerous subjects, and definitely your book, 2008, What Really Happened During That Time. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was great to be with you today, Larry.
You bet, Todd. Chevalier had put out on some of her previous social media before they tried to wipe it out, talking about wiping her dirty hands on the American flag instead of reaching for a napkin. But it gets worse. Coming up, some of the Islamists in this nation preaching that child pedophilia is better if you're not praying to God, Allah. I point it that way.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Under wins. Under, O-N-D-E-R, underlaw.com. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington.
This is News Talk STL.
Got a black magic woman. Got a black magic woman.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
The one that sells drugs, good or bad? Just very quickly, good or bad? Bad. How about the murderer? How about the one who commits adultery, zina? What about the one who rapes a child? What about the one who drinks alcohol? What about the one who does the biggest of the kabair, good or bad? This person, one person that commits all of these sins, he commits all of these sins on a daily basis, but he prays, is better in the eyes of Allah than the one that doesn't commit any of these sins but doesn't pray. So you and your brother, yeah, I'm a good guy. Habibi, God, pack that up because it's not going to work on the day of judgment. Any person that misses one salah, one, not two, one salah, you miss one salah for no reason, you're worse than a murderer, you're worse than a rapist, you're worse than a terrorist, you're worse than a pedophile in the eyes of Allah.
That is an Islamic scholar stating basically, if you're not praying as you should to Allah on a regular basis, you are worse than a rapist, a pedophile, a killer, a terrorist of any type. And yet, many inside the Islamic jihadist movement or every one of those things. And they may well be praying to Allah on a constant basis as dictated by their religion. And we're talking about Islamists, not talking about all Muslims. We're talking about those of the hardcore jihadists. They have no problem with raping babies when they went across the line into Jerusalem, Israel, I should say, nor throwing them into microwaves, nor raping women and killing elderly men. They had no problem with that because they were good by Allah, according to this Islamic scholar. As long as you're praying to Allah as you should, you can do all these things and you're better off than someone who does not take time to pray to Allah. I'm sorry, that's twisted. Beyond twisted. And yet we have the leftists remaking themselves almost daily now and trying to see how much farther left can they go and how many will follow them. And they are getting a lot of youth involvement, but generally it's those uninformed. But it also includes those inside Ivy League institutions that are thinking, yeah, we need more socialism. We should share the wealth. Everybody's about sharing the wealth as long as it's coming from someone else's pocket. Very few who have wealth simply hold it for themselves and their family. They often make donations to various groups, and they create jobs, and they lead to more inventions and things better for the nation, the world as a whole. They're not sitting on it. It's being spent somewhere, being used to some extent. But again, they want capitalism, the Western world, to be an evil thing. I have a commentary that's been running I had a commentary that's running today talking about why are there so many haters in this country, and talking about a recent survey that pointing out the political divide, and it is a political divide because of Trump primarily. 25% of Democrats surveyed considered our country was one of the worst. 4% of those Democrats said our country is the worst in the world. And yet they still live here. And we know why, don't we? Because they try to spout off that kind of nonsense in North Korea or communist China or Russia, even in Cuba. See how fast they remain above ground. And, of course, in New York, you got Mondami pushing all of his socialist ideas and so forth, and yet I'm looking at a piece in Politico. Politico stands to the left, obviously, but they point out that Mondami and the city council have reached a $126 billion budget, $126 billion for New York City. But it dilutes on his promises to provide rental aid, which is one of the things he was running on. Free buses, going to lower your rents, do this, free grocery stores. There's no grocery store open since he came in. There will not be even by the end of this year. And now this budget they passed is going to dilute any of the promises they made that they would provide rental aid. $126 billion, and he campaigned that we will help the poor, we'll make sure that you get some of this. Well, they're not going to based on this. They formalized this budget the other day with a handshake between Mondami and the council speaker, just 15 hours before the budget was legally due. An unusually late deal, as it's pointed out by Politico. And Mondami said, above all else, this budget offers a roadmap for the years to come. In other words, you're not going to get any rent relief through my administration. He's gotten pushback, even from allies, including progressive members of the New York City Council, for pointing to the posture and defending why he can't, at least for now, make good on some of the big-ticket promises. Everything he's promised, nothing. New York, GOP candidate Blakeman says what he would do on his first day.
So on day one, as governor, I will sign an executive order that we are no longer a sanctuary state. That's number one. Number two, I will roll out the biggest middle-class tax cut in the history of New York. We are not going to tax people who make $50,000 or less. If they're single filers, if they're joint filers, if they're couples, we will make that $100,000. They won't have to pay taxes on their first $100,000. and we're going to create jobs, economic prosperity, and I will cut utility rates in half I will end the green energy scam that has been perpetrated on people in this state by Kathy Hochul. She takes money out of their payments every month to invest in science projects that cost billions of dollars. She gets millions of dollars in campaign contributions from these foreign companies that are engaged in the green energy scam. That ends on day one when I become governor.
Well, it's a proposal by a guy who's running and trying to get votes. We told you yesterday that the state of California, starting tomorrow, their gas tax, the state gas tax, is going up another 2 cents a gallon, making it about 68 cents for each gallon going to the state. The state of New York currently has a gas tax of just under 40 cents a gallon. Now, would he be cutting that? That'd be a great idea. Even for Republicans, all these things you're saying sound good, but you got to deliver. And know at the end you'll have a rainbow waiting for you. And I'm not talking about pride, but I mean there'll be a pot of gold and you'll have history written in your favor. And you might even get something like what Nancy Pelosi is getting at UC Berkeley.
Today is a very exciting day for me because today is the day Berkeley will be announcing the Nancy Pelosi Institute for Representative Democracy. My excitement about this springs from the fact that this will be totally nonpartisan. That's its value.
It is the right time and the right place to think about this Nancy Pelosi Institute for Representative Democracy, and Berkeley's public. And representative democracy is about the public, the people, all the people. Berkeley is a quintessential American university. When we think about its entrepreneurial spirit, this is a university that produces more startups than any other university. The freedom to teach, the freedom of expression. This public university is very representative of that. We're going to research democracy. Obviously, research is an important part of this institute, but we need to do more than that. We're literally going to strengthen it, and that's the goal. Nancy will be teaching here, so it is a new manifestation, and the institute will benefit from it.
Yeah.
When people ask me what gives you hope, my hope is with young people. The future belongs to them. It is what this is about. This is why I want to be here at Berkeley. One country, one destiny. That was what was embroidered in Abraham Lincoln's jacket. So we have a big responsibility to honor the vision of our founders. Democratic, just for the people.
I love it. I love how Nancy Pelosi wrapped in Abraham Lincoln. And Pelosi talking about at UC Berkeley, we're going to bring all the Democrat values to face again. UC Berkeley used to be the campus of free speech, but remember then they started condemning speakers that would not conform to what they wanted, wouldn't let them speak at all. Charlie Kirk chased off the campus, as well as others. And when you listen to Nancy Pelosi talking about everything this nation stands for, that's what we're going to promote. I want you to remember something. President Trump, in his first State of the Union address, and sitting behind him is Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House. And after he ends, in the midst of the applause, knowing she's on camera, ripping his speech apart and throwing it to the side. So much for belief in democracy. You can't even sit there and listen to the new president of this nation. You can disagree with him, but you felt compelled to show your disgust, your disdain, the fact that you were so sold out to anything that would damage our country. And now she wants you to believe this Nancy Pelosi UC Berkeley Institute will strengthen democracy. Yeah, right. You know, we're coming up, obviously, we are in the midst, and it happens not this coming weekend, but the weekend. Oh, yeah, it is this weekend. I had to stop and count my dates again. July 4th, this week, the 250th birthday party for our nation. And yet we've got haters in our nation doing everything they can to destroy what should be a national celebration for everyone, regardless of your color, your religion, your gender, a national celebration of this country, this republic, thriving for 250 years. And yet you got the haters. Deputy White House spokeswoman Jackson.
It is absolutely sick that these Trump deranged whack jobs are vandalizing our beautiful national mall, our beautiful national monuments, all because they hate President Trump. I mean, really, there is nothing more to say other than it is sick. And President Trump has made his message known loud and clear that if you break the law, if you vandalize our monuments, you will be held accountable. And I just think it is really sad to see that there is this division amongst the left on our country at a time when we should all be coming together to celebrate America's 250th birthday, something this administration is doing, making D.C. safe and beautiful for everyone, regardless of their political affiliation. There are sadly folks on the left who can't have that same unified spirit that President Trump is projecting ahead of our 250th birthday.
I will point out, and again, that's Abigail Jackson, the Deputy White House Press Secretary, Deputy Press Secretary. I will point out, that, again, the division, the fractures inside the Democrat Party currently with these pro-Hamas Democrat socialists, it's going to be seismic. It already is. The cracks are going everywhere in every direction. Give you a perfect example. In Maine, as you know, they're pushing Graham Plattner to win the U.S. Senate to make sure he gets that Maine seat. Well, the communications director for the state of Maine, AFL-CIO, statewide federation of 160 local unions, posted on social media, any Democrats who will not or will refuse to support Plattner should face execution after a revolution. This is how they talk to each other. Do you expect them to be any better or kinder to anyone who has an opposing view outside their party? And keep in mind, many inside the party, the so-called solid left. I mean, we are at a point now where Bernie Sanders is no longer liberal. He's not. Nor Pocahontas. And you got Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries thinking, how do we survive what we're giving birth to? That they don't turn on us. Bill Maher was talking to Vice President J.D. Vance on his program the other night. He said, I don't know why I can't get these Democrats to come on here. If I call you, you come on, but I cannot get Mondami to come on. I can't get some of the other Democrats to come on, but at least you're willing to come on. He said, I'm considering voting Republican in 2028. He said, every year I don't make my decision who has an R or a D. I actually always came to the conclusion the Democrat was better and voted for them. But this time around, looking at what we're doing with the Democrat Party, I'm thinking I might well vote Republican. I love it when the rats flee the ship and they turn on each other. As always, thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you're listening 6 to 8. And remember our pledge.